I work until the weekend during the busy season, so I'm glaring through a dirty window, staring at this cement road, waiting for the weekend. A break is what I'm seeking, so this is what I'm dreaming for, reeling as the clean wind blows.
He's big, right? It looked like it when he jumped.
Yeah, he's a good sized fish.
I saw him for a split second and I was running to go get my camera.
Dude, he was like, he came out and he just did this like jump and he like went to the side and he was like posing. It was so cool. That was a yellow too.
Yeah, it's looking nice.
It's a mud shark steelhead. This rod is like really light. Man, he's dark. This guy ran like in September. Dogging me. Yeah. Wow. Dude, he is like, he was gonna be a double stripe, but he's like double stripe, double brown stripe. Dude, he's so washed out looking.
Yeah, he is.
What a weird looking fish.
Let me get zoomed in on him.
Well, he's definitely camouflaged for this water. So you guys see how washed out this fish is, and he's missing a lot of his slime and scales. And somebody probably lifted this fish up and hugged him with a hoodie, and he lost most of that important slime. So try not to net them without nets that don't have the ghost netting, and try not to use those gloves that take all their precious slime away. Alright, he's about to go impregnate some hens. Bye-bye, baby.
Fresh fish.
Yeah, baby.
Isn't that faster water getting a lot of oxygen?
I said we need it fast and deep.
Oh yeah. Is he wrapped in leader?
Got some penicillin.
Penicillin.
I was almost gonna name my cure that. Oh man. Hell yeah. Wow.
Fucking full of piss and vinegar. Oh yeah. Gorgeous.
Perfect fish, man. Man, look at those colors on this one.
Let me hang on, hold her back up just for a second.
Holy shit, dude, that fucking... I mean, dude, she's perfect.
Yeah.
Like, perfect fish.
Trying to get really zoomed in on him.
Perfect.
Oh yeah. Look at her. Yeah, look at the deep purple there.
Right before dark, chartreuse bags.
Chartreuse bags.
Hey guys, it's Danny Colville from Colville Outfitters, and we just got off the river, and we're gonna do some demonstration on curing salmon eggs, and also tying some egg sacs, and also we're gonna show you some products that we have available. I know a lot of you have bought the new chrome cure that we're offering in the shop. That is our private label cure that has been tested and tried and true over the last few years, and I'm proud to offer it at the shop. It comes in either a 16-ounce container or an 8-ounce container. So you can find that on our website at colvilleoutfitters.com. And I'll give you guys a little display on how to use it, because there is no directions on the back of the container yet, but I am currently working on that. But it's also going to be nice to send people to this video so they could also see how to use the cure. So I have a nice bag of king salmon eggs right here from Lake Ontario tributaries, and these were harvested yesterday. So the very first thing I'm going to do is check for blood or any sort of other, anything else that could spoil the eggs. You know, any sort of grass or stones or anything that can damage the eggs. And you also want to make sure you don't river harden your eggs unless you're trying to tie really small bags. But if you want to have a better chance at tying a nice round ball when you tie your egg sacs, you want to make sure that you don't water harden your eggs, because when they go through a reverse osmosis, they'll actually absorb a lot of that water. And they're meant to be able to have gravel laid on top of it and hold up to the river elements. So you can imagine an egg has to be pretty tough. That's why water hardening them makes them so hard, like bouncy balls. So you want to avoid that. If you have a fish that has already been spawning and they've sucked water up and they've water hardened the eggs inside their stomach, then you'd probably want to try to pull as much moisture as possible off of them, unless you're curing them into singles where you want them as big as possible. Singles that you can wrap in netting, or singles that you're going to go through the process and make them where you can put the hook through them. So this cure that I'm doing now, it's an all-natural cure. There's no sulfites or sulfates in it, and it's all natural dyes from different products, nothing artificial in this cure. It catches everything, but it's strictly created for steelhead. I've caught in tons of king salmon on this, tons of coho salmon. It does work for everything because it's like a natural egg, but it's really specifically meant for steelhead. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some eggs out of the bag. And you can see I have a pair of powder-free nitrile gloves here. And the reason I like the gloves are not only to protect my hands, but not to get any of the natural oil that is in our skin into the bait. So we have this oil in human skin called sebum, and SEBUM, and it's an oil that we produce. It kind of keeps our skin so we don't dry out, but it's something that fish can absolutely smell. There's been a bunch of tests done. One study in particular where an angler was actually wading in the water, and he was 30 feet away, then 10 yards, then, which is the same thing, but 10 yards, 30 yards, 100 yards, and he was wearing shorts in the river, and the fish could absolutely pick up on the oil from his skin. I don't know the exact number, how many parts per million or billion steelhead could smell, but the fact of the matter is they have an incredible smell. They need to avoid predators like seals and sea lions, so they definitely have other senses that are able to protect them from getting eaten. So out here they don't need to worry about that as much in the Great Lakes because they pretty much are the king of the lake unless big old Mr. Muskie comes by. So anyway, so I'm going to pull these eggs out and put them onto the paper towel. And you can see they're real sticky. There hasn't been any water on these eggs. Most of the store-bought eggs that you are going to get have been rinsed with hose water. If you're really lucky, they rinsed it with river water. But not a lot of people spend attention to detail as far as making the egg a better fishable product. They pretty much just want something to sell you that you can put on the end of your hook that's going to last forever in your refrigerator or in a jar on the counter. So all the eggs we sell, I would happily fish confidently myself, and I really want to offer those to you guys as well. So we have, this is a 2-pound container. It's pretty large. I mean, I'd say you can get, depending on the egg sac size, 500 egg sacs out of this. It's really a lot of eggs. The minimum we ship is 2 pounds. It's $30 a pound. If you're in New York, you can do priority shipping because it's automatically 1 day through USPS. But if you are out of state, unfortunately, you have to buy express shipping if you really want to get them there quick. Our eggs do not hold up in really warm conditions. So if today, for example, it was 75 degrees outside, and if we shipped a bunch of eggs and they sat on a truck for a while, and it was already in the warehouse overnight, they probably aren't going to hold up the best. If you receive your eggs and they are lukewarm and the ice pack is thawed out, no problem, they're fine. But you don't want them for 3-4 days at that temperature. Having them for a day at that temperature is absolutely fine. The salts and the preservatives will protect the eggs, and they'll be absolutely fine. So I got some eggs out here. I'm going to do a little bit bigger of a batch. I'm going to spread them out. And I'm going to roll them on this paper towel here. And what I'm looking for is any blood that I might have in the eggs. So pull off a couple pieces of paper towel. I want to roll those eggs around, and I want to look for loose shells or blood specks or anything like that. So I got one tiny little blood speck. I see a couple little shells here. So these are like, as far as maturity goes, these are right at the end of being skein. So the fish hasn't started sucking any water up to water harden the eggs, so they're not as big as they can be, and they're still nice and soft. You can do a test on them. As you guys can see, I'm going to put very little pressure on these, and it breaks very easily. That's what you want in an egg. You don't want them to be bouncy balls. Trust me when I tell you. Otherwise, you're going to hook a fish on that bag, and you're going to be fighting them, and you're going to lose a fish, and you're going to reel in a full egg sac because you were only fighting a fish on part of the hook instead of the full hook. So the texture and softness is very important to me. There's lots of people that have recipes that are, tried and true over the past 30, 40 years, and that's awesome. They do brines with river water, tap water, whatever, but as far as I'm concerned, once these eggs go into water, they become no good for me anymore. So they're going to lose a lot of their scent, and they're going to be very, very hard. So at that point, you might as well use a bead. Okay, so I just checked them for blood. There's no blood, no impurities in this handful. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the chrome cure, which is, this is a batch that hasn't been bottled yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pinch of this, or you could take a shaker bottle's worth, and you're pretty much just going to dust the top of these eggs like you're salting a steak, okay? So you want to kind of make sure all the eggs get a little bit of salt on them. Okay, once I got them decently covered, now I'm going to fold them over each other with a plastic spoon. So I'm basically going to pull this spoon over and just kind of fold them over each other. Now if the eggs are so soft they're breaking when you do this, or they're sticking to the paper towel, no problem. Just dip the spoon in some distilled water or spring water and continue the process. It'll give the spoon a little lubrication so you're not breaking the eggs. So my goal when I'm using this cure is to get these eggs to last a couple weeks in the refrigerator. What you're going to want to do is after you do these eggs, you're going to want to freeze them into day pack sizes. You can buy a jar, a twist top jar like this, and put a piece of paper towel in it. We sell these jars called chrome tainers. We're at the new shop right now, so I'm pretty low on supplies here, but we have these sterilized jars we sell. They're polypropylene. They've had hot water pushed through them, and pretty much any plastic smell or anything like that is gone. They're really the best jar to carry your eggs in, and also to carry your sacs in as well. I like to freeze them in that, but you can go to the store and buy these Tupperware containers. Ziploc makes them, so there's different sizes. This is a 2 pound. This is about probably 12 ounces, 16 ounces, I'm sorry. So this is a 1 pound. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to, depending on how your eggs come out, put some paper towel in there when you freeze them. And what I would also suggest too is wrap them with foil. I've been doing this for 20 years now with preserving my eggs, and I have eggs that are from 2007 that I'm still using right now. So get some of these smaller containers. 16 ounces is pretty big. Unless you fish, 6 times a week or 5 times a week, you're not going to go through this whole jar. It's going to take a little while unless the fishing is unbelievable. So I typically like to get jars that are, you know, about this size for a day pack. And so this is a 4-ounce jar. So the 4-ounce jar is what I typically look for, but I like the twist tops more than I like the push-on tops. That seems to do a lot better for me. So I've sprinkled the first layer of cure on. Now I folded the eggs over. And now I have kind of like the bottoms of the eggs. And while you're doing this, if you see any shells in there, if you want to be super anal, you could pull the shells out. They're not going to hurt your egg sacs or anything like that. They're not going to be less effective. I'm just super OCD when it comes to egg sacs and stuff like that. Most of the scrape you'll receive from me will have a lot of shells in it. So if you get that, if you pour it out and lay it on a paper towel and rub it with another paper towel, a lot of those shells will come out. But I would tell you, you want to keep them in that juice that the scrape comes in the fridge, because that's all eggs that have popped. So it's just sitting in this beautiful nectar that as soon as it touches water, it turns milky white. So you really want to keep the eggs sitting in that nectar. So pull out what you're going to use on a paper towel, and you know, go from there. Don't you know, not use that nectar. So I just folded the eggs over. I'm getting ready to put the second helping of chrome cure on them here. So again, just a very fine layer. Alright, beautiful. So I got that second layer. Now I'm just going to fold these over top of each other again. Make sure that they all got some of that coating on there. Also, if you have some eggs that seem to be a little drowned out and pale, if you add this cure to them, they will get nice and translucent again. So right now they're already juicing up for me, so I want to make sure I get them into a Tupperware or a bowl so they could sit in their juice and go through reverse osmosis and sweat some of the moisture off the egg and then reabsorb some of the moisture. And like I said, guys, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a slight shrivel on the eggs when they're done, because then the egg has more play in it. So when you wrap it in an egg sac, the eggs have more room to smush and become a perfect ball. So they don't look shriveled when you tie them into a bag. They only look shriveled outside of the bag, and that's how you want them to look. Okay, I'm pretty happy with the amount of cure that's on here. If you really wanted to make these last a while, or let's say you were taking a trip somewhere, what I would suggest you do is maybe add a little bit extra to it. Let's add just a small amount extra. And this will give you a longer shelf time, a longer time for it to be in the refrigerator, or a longer time at room temperature. So if you know you're going to be keeping them in the fridge longer than a month, put on an extra little bit of cure onto them. Okay, so these eggs are starting to juice up nicely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my paper towel and transfer these right into a bowl. You want to make sure you get them away from the paper towel, because you don't want the paper towel absorbing the juices at this point. So I'm going to let that sit at room temperature for 4 hours, and then we're going to pop it in the refrigerator after that. So we're going to watch them sweat, juice up, and then reabsorb the juice, and and they'll be ready for the refrigerator. So if they are scrape, okay, what I typically like to do is scrape, because you're never going to get all the blood out of it. Scrape tends to turn like a slight caramel brown color, which is absolutely fine, and they fish really good. But you're basically locking that color into it when you put the cure onto it. So, and you definitely, if you're doing scrape and you don't want that brownish color, you don't want to add the brown sugar, which everybody loves, because it makes the egg caramelize a little bit more, and it gets this deep brown color, which does work, but it's just not as attractive to the eye typically, but they're good eggs. So if I do skein scrape, I'll typically put them in a longer Tupperware. I don't know if I have one handy. I could use this guy here. So if this was scrape, what I would do, I'm just going to give you a small little example here. So let's say that was a fish's worth of eggs, and I put the cure on. I'm going to put the eggs to one side of the Tupperware, and I'm going to put something under the Tupperware and angle it so it goes down like this. And what will happen is, as those eggs juice up, it will sweat off any blood that you missed on the outside and drain down the Tupperware to one side. And you'll be able to collect a lot more blood that you might have missed when you were cleaning it up after scraping it. So I'm going to go over right now how I scrape the eggs as well, and let you guys take a look at that. Alright guys, what I got for you now is this nice beautiful Chinook skein. It's very mature, it's real clean, the fish was bled out, so there's very little blood. I actually went through the skein, found the blood lines and pushed on them and got most of the blood out. So you could either use the back of the spoon or the round portion of the spoon and just kind of push the blood out so it comes out, especially if you're going to use this as scrape, or I'm sorry, if you're going to use it as a solid skein. But the sulfite, the hotter cures that you use for salmon will preserve blood a lot better than the all natural cures that just have salt in them. So I'll show you guys how I scrape a skein. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it egg side down. I do want to trim this round portion at the end here that kind of encases the eggs. I want to open that up. Okay, now I can lay it flat. Okay, and this is where it helps to have a little bit of water, because when you get your skein, what you should do is you should wrap it in paper towels and try to let any moisture pull off of the skein. That's your first thing you should do when you get home. And when you do that, you're gonna get a much more premium product, and it's gonna be easier to work with. You could also, if you can't get to it right away and you're gonna scrape it within a few days, you can wrap them in paper towels, go to work, do your thing, and then come back home and check them. The paper towel seems like it's got blood in it, what you're going to do is take that paper towel off and rewrap it in a fresh paper towel. Okay, so I have the smaller part of the skein at the bottom facing you guys. I got some distilled water here in this bucket. What I'm going to do is just work these eggs down slowly, and they should just start popping off real easy. If you do get a little membrane in there, don't worry too much, because that adds scent, and at times it seems like they like it more when there's membrane on it. As you guys know, I got like 500 pounds of skein, and I did this with 500 pounds of skein, and I had to do it with limited time because they would have went bad. So it was a heck of a lot of work to get all that done in time and in the refrigerator before they started spoiling. We are currently in the new shop. Everyone keeps asking me when it's going to open.
Please try again.
Everyone keeps asking me when the new shop's going to open. Is it off or on? Or?
Oh, you're good. It was my Siri phone. Apologies. That was my fault.
You're good.
You're good.
So we're in the new shop, and everyone keeps asking me when we're going to be open. And I really don't have an answer. I was shooting for November, but it's looking like we're probably going to open for the new year. It's just, I'm trying to make this place absolutely incredible. I could open it right now, but I really want this place to wow people when they walk in. And I have a lot of amazing people that are coming in and lending me their skill set and doing incredible work. My friend Kevin Cady built this beautiful soffit out of hickory. It's just incredible. I'm so excited for you guys to see it when you come in. I also got all the walls covered in hickory that my friend Mike Skinner did from 716 Trim Works. This place is going to be amazing, guys. There's pallet walls, cork bark, fish cleaning station. I won't have to work in the middle. Right now we're standing in the future Sims section. So this is going to be the last time you're ever going to see me do any work here. So, imagine, what this place looks like now. It's going to be absolutely nuts when you guys see it in a few months. So my skein started to get slightly dry, so I'm just going to take some distilled water and rub it on the back of the membrane so there's more lubrication as I continue scraping. Also, it is very, very important that the eggs are at room temperature. The colder that you have the skein, if you pull this right out of the refrigerator, the membrane is going to be much more tough, and you're going to have a heck of a time pulling the eggs off it cleanly if it isn't at room temperature. We just got back from our fishing trip, and this skein was in the refrigerator. So what I had to do was I actually filled up a bucket with warm water, and I put the skein inside that bucket, but the skein was in a bag. So I had a bag that was wrapped in a paper towel, and I put it in the bucket, warmed it up just enough where it was still cool, but the eggs would scrape off, and then continue from there. So I can't tell you how important temperature is and the air curing of the egg. You got to make sure you introduce the right amount of air, and you got to make sure that that you have it at the right temperature. Checking on my other eggs, they're juicing up nicely here. And just roll them around. Alright, we'll get back to our skein here. So the quicker you do it, you could go through it really quick, but if you take your time, you're going to get less broken eggs. Also, if you want to, if you have a skein that's this clean, you could also continue that process of drying them out with paper towels, and you could actually just when you get them dry, you could actually just salt them let them juice up in a Tupperware or a bag, and then take them out of that Tupperware in the bag and let them sit at room temperature and get a little tacky, and then roll them in a paper towel again, put them in the fridge, pull them out, and then you just keep repeating that process until you get the egg dry enough where you want it. And then you can cut them into small clusters and run doubles or singles rather than fishing an acid cured egg you can put the hook through. You could actually just do a egg loop knot and just hook a small double or single egg, and it is deadly, especially in the Erie tributaries of Pennsylvania. So single eggs are huge out there. I prefer to just run little clusters of skein when the fishing gets tough, and it really works out incredible. So we're getting this nice clean pile of eggs here. We're just working our way through. So when you get to this point, you have this empty piece of membrane here. You can go ahead and trim that membrane so the eggs don't have as much to work underneath. Pull that membrane out, put it over here. Just keep working them out. I'll tell you what, it is really tough to beat a fresh salmon egg for steelhead any time of the year. There is a unbelievable amount of people who think trout eggs are going to outproduce salmon eggs, and it's a misconception because you can't buy trout eggs. They're illegal. So what happens is most of the people who are fishing trout eggs are catching a lot of fish. And the reason is because they did something like this. They took their time, they made sure it didn't touch water, they scraped them, or they just got them out of the fish, and they didn't put any heavy-duty solvents or acids or sulfates on them to last forever. Most bait shops, their sole purpose of curing that egg is to last in the fridge however long it needs to, and those eggs don't fish great, honestly. So you can see how much of a tedious process this is. You certainly can use a tennis racket or a screen and push the skein down and rub it. I just prefer to do it this way because I would say, as weird as this sounds, it's a more intimate process, and I'm actually getting each egg and looking through the, instead of it being underneath me catching in a bowl, I'm able to look at each pass and see what's coming off this skein and make sure everything that's coming off I want in my pile of good eggs. So it's pretty interesting. As you guys know, I live in New York, and this is the first year in our Erie tributaries that we got our quote-unquote domestic steelhead. It's like a fall running fish. We lost that fish somewhere around 15 to 17 years ago. The hatchery had whirling disease, and they replaced the stocking with brown trout, and we never really got returns of all of those browns that they stocked. And it's weird because in Ontario, the browns return immensely, and we just never got the returns. The creeks that got the better returns had a deeper basin at the mouth of the creeks. So a lot of our creeks, the smaller ones and even the bigger ones, it's very shallow at the mouth, and it doesn't seem like the browns like that as much. They seem to like deep water and be able to dip in the river and not run really high in the system. They definitely stay lower. And it's the same thing with these domestic fish, these steelhead. People talk about they oftentimes, especially when you go up to the Ontario tribs, they talk about these domestic rainbows, okay? A domestic rainbow to me is a rainbow that lives in the river like you'd catch in the summertime. And, you know, domestic means like, to me, like that's their home. And these fish, the river isn't their home. The river is where they go to spawn. So to me, they're all steelhead. They're just different strains of steelhead. They could spawn with a Manistee strain fish or a Chambers Creek or a Ganaraska. There's so many different fish in the Great Lakes system. And the purest bred genetics are definitely in Michigan, the little Manistee fish. And they are, they have wild fish actually in a lot of their creeks, and I'm surprised. I never really looked at, they all pretty much look the same because they came from the same stock, but there's like a pure Marquette fish, and a few other smaller tribs. They naturally reproduce, and it's just absolutely amazing how good the management is out there. A lot of the people in Michigan complain about the management of the rivers, but I think they do a much better job than we do here in New York. It seems like everybody in every state complains about the DNR in their state, but I don't know. I think all the other states do a much better job than we do. And I'll tell you what, with all of these people getting into fishing since COVID, there is a lot more licenses being sold. Are they stocking more fish now that there's all these licenses being sold? I don't think so. Something's got to give somewhere. They need to do some better management, allowing the fish to travel further and have a better chance at natural reproduction. Or they need to stock more fish. It's kind of a sad state of affairs on our tributaries, honestly. It started off to be a really great fall. We got a great run in September and early October, and the fish just seemed to kind of get really stale here over the last couple weeks, in my opinion. There's a lot of good fishermen out there now, and they got a lot of good bait, a lot of good gear. They spend a lot of time learning all this stuff. So there's lots of competition, and back in the early 2000s or late 90s, there wasn't the same amount of competent competition. There's a lot of guys that really are good on the pin now or running bait casters. Okay, you guys can see, I'm not going to bore you with the rest of this, but you guys can see this pile of beautiful eggs. Take a look at that. That came from that skein. And you can look at the difference, of the color. That's a pale yellow and this is an orange. So you really get a variation from fish to fish. I don't typically fillet these fish that I get the eggs from. I buy them from anglers or get them from distributors that get them right from the bulk anglers. So sometimes I get the eggs and I'll have orange and yellow eggs, but you get a lot of difference in the eggs from fish to fish, and I'm sure the fillets probably are pretty close to color as the eggs are. So I believe, with these paler yellow eggs, I believe the fish are going to be more of that washed out orangish white, and these brighter orange eggs, I believe, you're going to have a more orange fillet. Okay, so our singles, our loose singles are turning out good. They're juicing up nicely here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some cure on our skein scrape. As I'm going through this, I'm kind of finding small little pieces of membrane you could pick out. The membrane, paper towel is like a vacuum for membrane. So if you have any loose membrane or blood spots, you could see there was a little piece on that one egg. It picks it up no problem, and it sticks right to it. So you're really able to separate it pretty easily, the shells and any little blood spots or membrane from your paper towel. Alright, so again, one more time. I'm gonna just dust the top of the eggs. Get a thin layer on it. Now I'm going to just roll the eggs around, fold them over top of each other. I am going to Ohio also next week for the Ohio, I think it's Ohio Basin Steelheaders Association meeting. And I hope to have some eggs then this weekend coming up that I'm able to do this for you guys in person. If you're interested, just look up Ohio Basin Steelheaders, and I'm sure you'll find the information for that. So I folded these eggs over each other. I'm going to take my second little run of cure. What I'll actually do is I actually pinch my fingers and kind of grind it a little bit. Some of the contents of this cure you can't really get broken into fine enough crystals or grain. So I'll actually kind of break it up in my fingers, kind of smush it together here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and fold this over one more time. And you can see what happens is the eggs actually start to get opaque. They start to almost get whitish, and that means the cure is on top of them. And once they go through their curing process, they'll become translucent, and you will have beautiful, clear, translucent eggs once you put them in the refrigerator. And you'll come back, it's like magic. It looks wonderful. Alright, now I'm going to put these in a container. This one will do, and I'll show you guys what I'll do to make sure I got all the blood off them. There's very little blood in these eggs, but I'll still show you guys anyways. As you can see here, this is all extra blood that came off of this fish. So naturally, there's going to be some blood in with these eggs, no matter how clean they look. So I typically bring these up here. I feel like I'm doing a cooking show right now. It's great. Okay, so I got them to one side of my Tupperware here. I'm gonna find, you good? I'm gonna find something a little smaller here so I can lean them up on an angle. This is the top of a Pro-Cure container or something. Put that on an angle, and I'm gonna just let them sit there and start to drain off to the side. And I'll show you guys the blood that will actually come off the eggs here in a couple minutes. The final thing I want to show you guys is how to tie egg sacs. And as simple as it is, a lot of people have questions about it, so I'm going to go over that right now. Alright, these eggs from the scrape have been curing for about 2 to 3 minutes, and as you guys can see, there's an absolute massive amount of blood coming out of them. Now, if you were going to put these in a cup and let them cure up, what they would do is they would basically sweat off that blood, and then it would become reabsorbed again. So you'd get that caramel looking egg like I was describing. But it's an unbelievable amount of blood here that we're getting. I'll show you guys on a paper towel. And as this is kind of dripping off the eggs, try to catch it in case the eggs start to roll down to the other side. Once it's off the eggs, you don't want it to go back onto the eggs. But you guys can see how much blood actually came off those clean eggs. Most people would put them in a Tupperware, let them sit there, and not sweat the blood off. And, you know, I definitely sweat the blood off and make sure that that isn't in my eggs, because that's going to make it spoil a lot quicker. I'm not one of those guys that believes that steelhead are super afraid of blood, because I've seen it firsthand. People catch steelhead, cut them open, and tie straight skein sacs, not even bleeding the fish out. A couple buddies of mine in Michigan, we actually call them tampon bags, because they're just so loaded with blood and membrane, but they catch fish unbelievable, sometimes even better in dirty water. So blood isn't going to kill you, but it's definitely going to make the eggs not last quite as long. So do this trick that I taught you guys, where you put the Tupperware on an angle and just keep pulling the blood off as it drains. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie some egg sacs for you guys and just kind of show you how I do it. I got some of the most popular netting colors here. This is pink and chartreuse. These are the company Raw out of Michigan. They're the same company as the Lee's netting. I also like the Melneck, as long as you don't get one of the stiff batches. That's good too. Mike's Atlas makes great netting. I don't want to bash any other companies, but there's a couple other companies that pretty much just go to the hobby shops, buy that really stiff toolie that they have there for like wedding veils and stuff, and they cut that up and put it into packages and sell it as egg sac netting. But I'm telling you, it is too stiff to use, and not to use those brands, and not to go to the hobby shop and buy that netting, because you're going to realize how stiff it is. It's going to scrape the eggs and break them, and you're going to set the hook and it's just going to rip, because it doesn't have that nice stretch that this stuff has. So buy the stuff that's actually made for tying egg sacs. I'm going to tie some egg sacs now. As you can see, I have a little egg sac board that a friend of mine, Mike, made. It's got some holes here for the scissors, spoon, all that good stuff. So I pretty much lay out all the netting ahead of time. I scoop out all the eggs I need onto the bait board. Kind of guesstimate what size I'm going to need for the area I'm going to fish with the egg sacs. So I pretty much will run 5 to 7 eggs. Once I have them all laid out, if I see some shells, I'll kind of go through and pick the shells out. You don't need to do that, like I said. The shells do trap a lot of scent in them, but I just don't like the way they look. So I got all my eggs laid out. I have a product in the shop. It's our own line of threads. And this stuff is called a row wrap. They come in bunches of different colors. They come in purple, blue, chartreuse, yellow, pink, red, orange, every color. But I really like to give the egg sac some contrast. So I got pink, chartreuse, and limoncello netting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through them and use a contrasting color for each egg sac. If I'm fishing tannic water, I'll typically bring the blue into it, or if I'm fishing really clear pressured water. If I'm fishing dirtier water, I'll use a chartreuse with the pink. And if I'm fishing dirtier water, or I'm fishing first thing in the morning or right before dark, I like the chartreuse, and I'm going to run either chartreuse thread with it, or I'm going to run the pink thread. So you guys know how to tie an egg sac, but I'm going to show you anyways. I'm going to pinch them together like this, fold all 4 sides together like a dumpling. And a lot of people will tighten these bags up and really crank down on them, and that's why they like the heavier breaking thread and the more durable eggs. But these are a little bit more difficult to tie, but they're going to pay off in the long run. So give yourself some room there. If you tie the egg sac loose, you could always simply hook it in one spot, avoiding an egg, spin the egg sac, and then hook the netting on another spot, and you tighten it right up real easily. So you almost want a looser egg sac. So I'm going to spin the netting around. And I'm going to grab my chartreuse thread here. I typically keep this stuff on my lap, but for demonstration, I'm going to leave it up here. I'm going to start a little bit higher on that bag. Pretty much will wrap this till I run out of thread on the one side. Do 3 twists with the other side, break it, and there's the first bag. Now we'll go again. This is kind of like a mix between rolling a joint and making a dumpling. So try to make a nice round ball. Grab your thread, start a little higher. Wrap it until you run out, come back the other side, and break. Okay, so when I'm doing this, I'm grabbing the thread. I'm starting about 1 inch to 1.5 inches up. I stretch the thread out. I start wrapping. And when I run out, I go 3 times with the other side of the thread. And I break it. This Colville row wrap really is awesome stuff. I make an ultralight version only in clear, so if your eggs are really soft and you can't put the pressure on it with the heavier thread, that stuff is really great, and you get a lot of it for the money. Now, I'm not the fastest at tying egg sacs, but I'll sure tell you they look good. And I don't share them with my friends. It's one of the few things I'm kind of greedy with. There's only a couple things in life I don't share. Egg sacs and my woman. Okay. So got a few there for you guys. I'll do a couple chartreuse and I'll trim them up. I also got this beautiful glow yellow. I call it lemon ice. It's beautiful. And these are just so deadly, guys. If there are steelhead, this is tough to resist. Now, if you're fishing for brown trout, I will admit brown trout eggs and beads will outfish salmon egg sacs. I don't know why the browns key in so much. I just think they're not naturally, like whenever they went through evolution, they weren't in the same areas as salmon, and it's not ingrained into their brain to eat the salmon eggs like the steelhead are. The steelhead have been eating salmon eggs for 10,000 years, so when they stocked them in the 1800s or 1900s or whenever, it was already ingrained into their brain that salmon eggs were a really great source of food. But steelhead in general are just, they are very, very opportunistic, so they will pretty much eat whatever. You could catch them on a plastic bead for God's sake. So really the reason you go through all this stuff with these egg sacs is so you have the most confidence. Whatever adds confidence to your fishing experience will allow you to catch more fish for sure. Okay, so I got those ones laid out, guys. Once I have my pile done from this batch, I'll pretty much go through and just trim them all up real nice and pretty.
Do you find it matters if there's a little excess thread on them, or is that not a big deal?
No, like I said, just depends on the confidence. If, you know, like these ones have a little extra thread on there, and to me that won't affect it much. But if you think it's going to affect it, please trim it, because I'm telling you, little things like that will make you question yourself, and simple, you don't need to question yourself. There is our egg sacs. You can see how absolutely beautiful they are. And those are fish killing machines right there. This is a little harder egg. This is a loose egg. You guys can see this is the eggs that we're selling right now. We do have a limited amount of scrape left, but these ones are not as sticky, but they do fish very, very well. This stuff though, the scrape, is where it's at. It's a lot of extra work for us. We don't have it that often. Look how much more blood has come off this. See guys, that angle trick of angling the Tupperware. It's where it's at. Keep letting those go. This is our batch of Lucy's. You can see they're starting to get nice and translucent for us. Beautiful. There's all this juice in here right now. Can't really show it to you guys because it would pour out, but there's all this juice in here from the eggs sweating it off. So essentially, in the next couple hours, they're going to start absorbing some of that juice. And then what I'm going to do is put them in the refrigerator. And you could even put them, in a strainer in the refrigerator and let them just strain out a little bit. I really like my eggs in like a solid mass, like almost like a skein without the membrane. That's when you know they're really good and sticky. Okay, these are looking great, guys. Alright guys, so we're back with our cure. I wanted to show you some other products we have in the bait category, but this right here is an example of the eggs we sell. This right here is a loose egg. That's what I use to tie the egg sacs here. This is the non-cured version of this. So that's this stuff here that I use a chrome cure. You can see it's got a much richer like hint of orange, like almost like amber to the egg versus the yellow. Absolutely beautiful stuff. We're pretty much done with this curing. There's very little juice that this is making and sucking back up. So we're going to transfer these onto a paper towel, fold the paper towel up, put them back into this case or a different dry Tupperware, and then we're going to put it in the refrigerator overnight. And if you want a drier egg yet, you can leave the top off in the fridge as long as you're a bachelor or your wife is just really cool with a fishy fridge. And then you'll be able to get that nice clump of eggs that's like a skein without any membrane attached. Over here you can see our skein scrape stopped. It stopped juicing as well. There's one tiny little dot of blood over there, which is absolutely nothing to get up. So we'll pull that up, and these are ready for the refrigerator as well. Came out beautiful. And we do offer king salmon bait as well. That's going to be this stuff right here, and this is king salmon skein that's cured up in some different recipes. Of course, I took my glove off. I didn't realize I was doing this, but yeah, you can see the rows right there. If you don't know why roe is called roe, it's because of these rows inside this skein. You know, right here, it's like the folds in the skein are rows. But yeah, so this is for if you're going fishing for salmon. This is strictly a salmon bait. This is what we would tell you to get because it's going to be the most effective. When the kings come in the system, their bodies are going to be craving salt, and this stuff is perfect. It's one of the most sought after bait for king salmon is cured skein. And we have that available in pink, or we have a darker red color, which is right here. This one's got some borax on it already. This one doesn't. So there's a couple different options. We have only limited amounts of this stuff available, but it is available for right now. It's tough to freeze, so we don't freeze a whole heck of a lot. But yeah, that's what we got in the ways of skein. This one is a little dark from the blood, and it's still frozen. I wish I could show you guys, but I don't think it's going to work for me today. I could feel the eggs wanting to pop here, but yeah, I also have this stuff, and this hasn't been cured yet, but this is the kind of skein I was talking about. You could cut little clusters off and run them as singles. So when you, I'll show you guys really quick. If you cut off a little piece here, okay, cut off a little piece. Could pretty much get yourself like a small cluster like that. And this has not been cured yet whatsoever. So this is right out of the fish, wrapped in paper towel. I stuck it in the freezer, I pulled it out, and that's where we're at. But anyways, if you take this right here, this little cluster of eggs, and you cut that and you run like a single or a triple or a double, that is so deadly in low and clear water. The skein has so much more movement than an egg sac because it really is the water allows it to surge through the cluster and give it a lot of movement, so you don't get the movement with the egg sac. But that's what I really like doing. This, like I said, you would do the salt in the beginning, and then you would do the borax and kind of dry it out a little bit, and it will end up looking beautiful. But those are the clusters right there. Simple bait loop. You got a little membrane to hang on to, and you got a great bait. So We sell these natural loaves. They'll come to you like this. You gotta unthaw them to cure them. And we also have the cured loaves as well, which is a full skein that we've already dried, salted, and boraxed. And then we have some that we just borax. So, got a couple different options. But I'm about to send it off and say goodnight, guys. I appreciate you guys as customers. Thanks for being patient with the new shop, and thank you for all the business you send our way. We're so appreciative. We love y'all. Hope to see you on the river. Tight lines.